Northern Colorado versus San Diego State. It's March Madness. It's March Madness. I'm about mad from a lack of sleep.
You.
Who do you like and why?
All right. We're going to go with Northern Colorado, RJ. And let me tell you, this is real simple. This is a game where San Diego State's going to come in here. Even though we're playing in the NCAA, the big dance, they're going to be a little bit flat for this game, and I'll explain why to you.
All right.
This is a scenario that me and you always go head-to-head at. And when I tell you about, teams coming off a big game and they're going to be flat in the next game, you say, how can they be flat? This is a big game. They're playing for the championship or the March Madness. Well, all we've got to do is go back to last weekend. And it was a very good weekend for me, so it's going to sound self-serving for me, but this was the point. BYU and San Diego State were the two class teams in the Mountain West Conference this year. Friday night, BYU played New Mexico. They only had like 4 losses on the season or 5 losses, but 2 of them was to New Mexico. BYU got their revenge Friday night. They took it to New Mexico. Jimmer for that had a great game, 52 points, and then they moved to Saturday, the championship game. And you would, if we did a video, you'd have been saying, Marco, how can you tell me that BYU is going to be flat because they're playing in a championship game? They were, and I actually was there, watched the game, and there was such fulfillment in getting that monkey off their back against New Mexico. The tables were turned Saturday
Let me ask you a
night.
question. When you tweeted from the game, you were tweeting about the concessions and not the game itself. Why?
Yeah, that wasn't it. I actually, anybody that was smart enough to read between the lines of my tweets, 15 minutes before tip-off, I actually gave out my game of the year on the tweet. If you read the tweet.
But that's rare. I mean, it's hard. You don't even tip if the waitress isn't good. So the fact that they got that game of the year, that was a once in a year kind of thing.
I was feeling pretty good that day. But situation really, San Diego State only had 2 losses all year, RJ, and both of them were to BYU. They got that monkey off their back. It was a blowout, pillar to post, and I can tell you that when the game was over, some of the San Diego State players got in Jimmer Fredette's face. They were jawing a little bit as they were going off the court. This is going to be a lackluster performance for me. I believe on San Diego State. They're going to come out a little flat, little cocky, take this team for granted.
Now, I actually don't disagree with you on that concept. And the reason is the line is 15.5. So now I would have probably disagreed more on the BYU side, though. I don't. Is it that they were flat, or is it that after this team the way they are today really isn't near as good as San Diego State? That's a question. So let me ask you. I mean, watching the game realistically, without it being a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me define that for you. You get an idea, then you see things, and you try to make the things you see fit into that concept. Watching the game, were they flat or were they just not as good of a team?
It was actually a combination of both. They're not the same team since the suspension of that kid. Jimmer Fredette's got to do too much. And he played 40 minutes on Friday night, played the entire game, never come off the floor and scored 52 points. You can't sustain that.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting point. Are we looking to fade BYU if they win in game 1? It's a 2-day, it's a 2-day turnaround with a lot of emotion. Kids aren't used to that. Because they're thinner, do we look to fade BYU in round 2?
Well, the difference in this tournament than last week is they do get that day in between.
Yeah, but still, it's usually Wednesday, Saturday. This is going to be travel, all the emotion around the tournament, play a game, win, all the emotion around that, then play within 48 hours.
You are, but I just don't think it's going to be as hard to come back. And you've got to look at the game and see how much energy. But he absolutely carried that team on Friday night on his back. One of the best performances I've seen an individual college player have.
So another factor in their poor performance, as you said, was a thinner team with the fatigue night after night after night, which is a key in conference tournament handicapping. You had a great run, 8-2 during the conference tournaments, and VR had a great run. You guys are really locked in. And again, historically, we've had a great March Madness too, so I'm excited about that. So I guess my point is I could see the flatness because it's not about winning the game. It's do they win by 8 or do they win by 18?
Right.
So, okay, so Northern Colorado.
This is a team that, obviously nobody knows anything about. They're in the Big Sky Conference. They won 10 of their last 11 games. And this is a team that, rolled through the Big Sky. Not only did they win their conference during the regular season, but they took care of business also in the tournament, because this is one of those conferences that if you don't win your tournament, don't matter what you did during the regular season, you're not getting there. And what I like about this team is they play defense. And defense is going to keep you in ball games. They held their last 4 opponents to average 38.75% from the field.
38.75. 38.75.
Same difference.
Now, how did you get that number? Did you have a calculator?
Well, of course.
So you actually added it? How many times did you check it?
I'm a one and done.
So really, the odds
I
are
left
about
an opening
30%.
there. I left an opening there for you.
I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go there. The odds are about 30%. That's numbers right. Let me give you a hint. You go in Excel. I just pop an Excel sheet. Then you can put each number there, do the math, but then you can eyeball it after, because with a hand calculator, you don't know the number you just put in. Yeah. But I'm gonna have faith in you and assume that number's right.
Trust me, when it comes to numbers, I'm on the money. Have you ever seen me being off whenever it comes around the end of the month for commission checks?
That's a good point. Well, you certainly are never short. Let's just say that. Okay, so I actually, I'm starting to. Any other thoughts before I make my decision?
This is a game that I expect to be played in the 60s. And again, when you're looking at playing a game in the 60s and we're looking at a spread of this number, I got to grab the dog. And let me say this: we're going to have a video later. And I'm saying how San Diego State's going to have a flat spot. You're going to be surprised in our later video when we talk about some future bets. But in this game, they're going to get a little bit of a scare. San Diego State will win the game, but they're not going to cover. I have them winning the game 68-60.
All right, official projection. Let me pose something, too, because I think it's interesting in the tournaments. What do you think about taking dogs in the first half? Because the theory is that you often see a situation where there's 9 minutes left and the score's like 14-11. Mm-hmm. It's just the shooting. Remember, one of the keys is in the NCAAs, the shooting backgrounds are oftentimes really troublesome. So outside shooting teams have a disadvantage. And additionally, it takes a while. In the first game, remember, you're playing 2 games in the same place. The first game, that first half, is the first time you're playing in an unfamiliar, likely, and an unfriendly shooting environment, which means points will be at more of a premium if it's tougher to score. Thus, the idea of getting plus, I'm guessing, plus 9 maybe in the first half, plus 8.5?
Right.
Do you like that maybe a little bit better?
What you're saying in principle definitely makes sense. You're definitely the depth perception because you're in such a bigger arena for these.
Cavernous, I've heard people call
it. I can't help it, but at this time of the year they always play it on the movie channels and that. But the movie Hoosiers, and I can still remember Gene Hackman when they got to the
tape
championship.
measure.
Yep, it's still the same. Still the same distance. But yes, that's a good point. You see so many of these teams come out. The dog is energized. Let's face it, they're,
Let's be honest, as much as San Diego State is off a big win, being a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, they're not going to sleep on that for long. I think that the chance of them being flat in the first half is a lot. If they come in at halftime only up 4, the intensity is going to be there in the second half.
Absolutely. And my whole premise is they're going to come out flat, so that would, concur with the first half wager.
Wow. So really, you're saying I've convinced you to change?
Well, I'm still taking Northern Colorado for the game, but with my theory and your theory combined, that's a nice hedge bet as well.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be neutral on your bet, but I'm going to give my own bet and take them in the first half.
Wow.
Or Northern Colorado in the first half.
So if you win that, do I get like an assist?
Yeah,
okay.
That's fine. All right. It's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we'll be breaking down, big game, Tom Izzo, Michigan State versus UCLA.